Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian, and today we are recording episode number 195. I think, is that what we agreed on? Yeah, 195.
Yes, it is. We're at 195. Yes.
All right, good. All right. We just said it, too. We are 4 years into this podcast. I'm very excited. Today's guest, we're going to be talking about, you're going to get a chance to meet Jolene Blackbourn, who is an estate planning attorney expert, and she has a very unique approach to her business and how she helps special needs families. And more importantly, she has a phenomenal story, personal story, as a mom of two children with special needs issues and a whole bunch of other stuff in her family life. So she's going to share some of that with us today. And it's also always good to know. It's why Sean and I have enjoyed doing this podcast, is because we are also parents of special needs children, and so we understand, and so there's a relatedness with the people that we help and work with and serve. So today's no exception. Stay tuned for another episode of Just Two Dads. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Altunian along with Sean Francis, and this is another episode of Just Two Dads. 195. I'm just going to say it. We know it's a lot. We've been doing this for 4 years. We were having conversations years ago as dads of kids with some special needs issues, how we deal with the things that come at us and the people that we talk to. And we thought this would be a fun thing to share with others that are going through the same experience as parents of special needs children. And we have found that we've encountered so many amazing people providing services to the special needs community that we thought we are going to formally turn this into a podcast and introduce people to other folks, professionals, service providers who are doing amazing things for our community. So really excited about today's conversation. And before we get into that, by the way, we're no longer doing this live. 4 years into this, we decided with season 4, we're recording these and uploading them after the fact. So we're not trying to put people into a box of being there, at Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, because frankly, as special needs families, very few things stick to a schedule, as we've all discovered. So we want to thank you if you're catching us on our YouTube channel or on our website at justtwodadspodcast.com. Also, if you're catching us on any of the podcast outlets auditorily, thanks for making this part of your listening day. And thank you to those folks down at WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We are excited to be doing this. It's our passion project. We love what we do here. And thank you to Billy Footwear, always a great partner of ours. You can find, we're going to put a link up here at some point on the on our show notes. So if you're hearing this, go see the video and get the show notes. Billy Footwear does amazing adaptive footwear for folks of all ages, of all stripes, of all kinds. And if you click on now, they're having a sale right now, but if you click on the link that we provide, we'll get you an additional 15% off. So thank you, Billy, for always being a partner and friend of ours. And I think that's it for introductions. We're excited to be doing this and having this conversation. It's been an interesting week. Sean and I and Jolene all live in the Southern California area. So the last couple of weeks, we've been dealing with the aftermath now of the fire conditions and other things that are going on in Southern California. For us, we say that we have 2 seasons in Los Angeles. We have nice and fire season. Those are the 2 seasons. And so that is coloring a little bit of the background of what we're dealing with this week. But we'll get into that and other things today. Before we get into our conversation with Jolene, by the way, Sean and I have a ton of energy and we talk a lot. And now we're going to throw Jolene into the mix, and her energy is infectious, and you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So it's going to be a really fun episode. Sean Francis, how are you doing? It's Monday. It's Martin Luther King holiday. It's inauguration day. How's the day going for you so far?
It's good. It's there's a lot to be thankful for. A lot of synergy that's taking place. As you know, my background is blurred, but as you know, Brian, on my bookshelf, there's more than one Bible, more than one Quran. There's even a Book of Mormon. And I didn't purchase any of those. And I think that's the universe's way of responding to my the fact that I am more spiritual than I am religious. But years ago, I had a subscription to an entity, a publication called the Daily Word, which is from Unity Church, and it's Christian based, right? Um, and I try to avoid being put into a spiritual pigeonhole, so to speak. Haven't had a subscription in years. One showed up in my mailbox maybe just after Christmas, and I asked my mom, "Hey, did you get me a subscription?" Because she subscribes, and she says, I don't really think so. So I just decided to embrace it and not even question it. And as a teenager, what always struck me when reading those passages, and they're just daily words. There's a daily word. The word might be faith, and then there's a passage on that, and then a Bible verse at the bottom of the page. If you take the Bible verse away and just look at the word and then the commentary about the word, what struck me is that somebody wrote that, I don't know, a year in advance, whenever, but the word for the day and its phrase always seemed to be written by someone that was sitting on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And now is no exception. And what I've begun to do is I'm reading it each day, and it really is a form of centering for me. But what I've done is I read it aloud with Laura, with my wife, and then I'm into Elijah. But what I'm having him do is actually read it aloud. And what's happening is you take Christianity away from it, and just the idea, or I think the need to believe in something greater than yourself. It's very centering. So I'm really going through something with that in a very, very good way. But I think that's and the word of the day has everything to do with world peace, and the idea that, for instance, I pray, at least I thought I was, but what I was really doing is speaking to whatever being is greater than myself, asking for something, hoping to do my part, and then still holding on to the resolution. Prayer is about completely letting go. So, and then as a caregiver and parent to a child with special needs, that just seems to be completely magnified. And so for that reason and many more that I've learned in the last maybe 48 hours about our guest today, I'm exceptionally excited about our guest today. And so
wait, what's the word of the day? What's today's word of the day?
Today's word was world peace.
Oh, it was world peace. Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yes,
if that's
and it was, and I'm sure it was chosen because it is the day where we celebrate the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King. But given, and Brian knows how I did and did not vote. I'm not revealing any of that or sharing that, but because of the inauguration that's taking place and the sense of division that has come with that word, and what the paragraph says about that word is just so ridiculously fitting, because I'll just say that it talks about putting aside what one may feel about something other than the inherent value of their fellow man. And it goes back to something I said to my brother after we did an episode. I said, you know what? I realized that empathy takes at its truest level takes real work, like real serious work. And my brother said, I don't think that's true. We talked about it on the last episode. No, it doesn't take any effort to not be a jerk, but real empathy takes serious work, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other aspect to that world peace, and today being a thing, is, today being a significant day, is that, last night the first hostages were released back to Israel and the beginning of the ceasefire. So again, steps towards world peace is happening, and that's always a good thing.
And again, that's a great example too, because it has nothing to do with how you feel about Israel's actions or whatever have you. If you're a decent person, you might feel like, I believe in this side versus that side, but I don't believe in the taking of innocent lives. But anyway, this is the longest intro we've done without our.
Hey, Jolene, welcome to the longest introduction we've ever done.
Yeah, thanks. I'll see you later. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for being here. See you later.
And it is not an indication of our level of excitement for you being here today. So we first and foremost, welcome to the show, Jolene Blackbourn. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And so Jolene has the qualifications that we all say that a hero needs to have, and the first qualification for any hero is to just do what they do and not see themselves as a hero. But I'm excited to learn about her story and what's led her to do what she does. She's an estate planning attorney specializing in special needs plans. We're talking about special needs trusts, wills, and things of that sort. But we'll talk a little bit about why those things are even more important to us in our community. But we're also going to talk about what led Jolene to that. So, Jolene, every hero has superpowers, and all superpowers come from a hero's origin. So, why don't you start with that? Tell us about where you're from spiritually, physically, geographically, and all those things, and what led you to the work that you do today, in addition to being a parent to a child or children with special needs as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as Brian said, I'm an LA person. So my family's been here for over 100 years. So we have been involved in the movie industry going back to pretty much the start of the movie industry. So we really are an LA family. Um, let's see, I grew up in Burbank. So I now just live, a couple cities away from there. And yeah, so I became a lawyer. Didn't really necessarily want to be a lawyer, but I just didn't like a lot of the lawyer things. So litigation, whatever they told me to do in law school, I pretty much did the exact opposite of. Somehow still managed to graduate and pass the bar the first time. So it all worked out. So
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, I started out in estate planning. I actually almost didn't take the class in law school. I checked in with my guidance counselor before my third year of law school, and she said, "Hey, you're not enrolled in wills and trusts." And I said, "Yeah, it sounds boring. I'm not going to take it." And she said, "Well, it's 2 out of 13 subjects on the state bar." And I said, "Yeah, but they'll teach it in the review course." And she's like, "But no, you got to take the classes." Well, it's not mandatory. I'm not going to take it. It's boring. She was almost crying. She was almost on her knees. I left there. I did not enroll. But at the and you enroll in August for the whole year's courses. But at the last minute in December, I changed my mind. I enrolled in Wills and Trust. I ended up loving it. I got the top score in the class. I was like, this is what I want to do with my life.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, totally different. Had no idea.
What do you love about it?
First of all, I'm a very logical, methodical person. So, it's a lot of rules that are very simple, that
Mhm.
it's just, hey, if you pass away without a will or trust, your stuff goes to this person. If you don't have those types of people, it goes to these people and these people. And there's just a lot of rules that they make sense. And I really liked that. I also liked that it wasn't, I mean, you can get into the litigation side, but you don't have to. I didn't really want to do litigation. There was several aspects that really spoke to me. And then plus you get to help people. You're directly helping people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I really liked that. And so I did it for a few years. But I graduated. I was the first graduating class after September 11th. And that hit the legal industry really hard. There were a lot of law firms in the World Trade Center, which had partner firms in LA. And so when I graduated, I was competing for jobs with 5-year attorneys who were willing to take the pay of a brand new graduate.
Yeah.
And everyone who had been promised a government position when they graduated, those were all reneged on. So all the people who were supposed to be out of my work pool were now in my work pool with me. So it was
Yeah.
really rough. And estate planning is mostly solopreneurs. So it's really hard to get a job there anyway.
Mhm.
I did manage to find a part-time job, and then I opened my own firm. But, being 27 to a bunch of 70-year-olds, you look like you're in middle school. And, it just really,
Yeah.
I had clients, but just not enough. And it was, the part-time work wasn't enough. And after a couple of years, I just was like, I need to pay my student loans. So I did go into litigation for about 15 years. And I
Mhm.
actually loved it. I earned the nickname trial queen, took a case to the California Supreme Court. I did all the things.
Okay.
Loved it unexpectedly. But um, in 2019, my kid's special needs was really just amping up. And they weren't diagnosed till later. My daughter was the first one diagnosed at age 12. Her current diagnoses are autism, ADHD, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia, with severe executive function disorder. And one of the big impacts is she has a lot of spatial awareness issues. So things like crossing the street can be a little bit dangerous and stuff like that.
Let me
My
ask you
young-
some.
Hmm?
I was
Go
going to ask you real quick. So you're currently now then a single mom?
I am a single mom. Yes, as of like
Okay.
2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So go ahead.
Yeah, the younger one, actually, when they were 1, I Googled
Mhm,
bipolar. So that's how young I felt something was off. But
mhm.
the definition, the symptoms for an adult bipolar versus a child is different.
Huh.
And so when
Wow.
you Google it, you're going to get the adult definition. So, of course, my child didn't fit into it. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm just wrong. Well, no, I was right. It just turns out that children have different symptoms. It manifests differently. And so about 10 years later, Googled it again and I was like, yeah, there it is. And so my child has, my younger one, ADHD, autism, bipolar. They're gifted, which is, its own set of problems. And I don't know. That might be it.
Let me
I don't know.
let me
I
ask
lose
you
track.
this, and if you don't, whether or not you mind sharing, but so you're out of law school, you get married, you have children, things don't work out. Did you? Was your situation such that you feel that the diagnosis of the kids led to the weight of the eventual dissolution of the marriage? Were you kind of figuring that out, things out on your
Yeah.
own to begin with?
No, it was probably like it exacerbated the issues. It didn't cause the issues. It
Yeah.
was probably 10, 15%. I really wouldn't say it was anywhere near the forefront. However, when they
Right.
were little, I knew something was wrong. And there was definitely something wrong with his parenting style. And it's always easy to say from your perspective, right, that their style was wrong.
Sure.
But he was very my way or the highway, which you really can't be doing with special needs kids.
Yeah, you just can't.
Yeah.
And that might be
And
how he was raised because we're the
mhm.
product of our environment, so to speak. Yeah.
Yes, his dad was in the
Yeah.
military. So, it so early on, I was like, let's go to parent classes, let's read parenting books, let's go to family therapy. And he just was like, no, 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 no. He wouldn't read the books I bought. It just nothing. So it was not, I wouldn't say the special needs is what caused it. I would say his inflexibility, his
Mhm.
being convinced that he had all the answers and that he couldn't possibly learn anything from anyone. I don't know. And anyway,
Yeah.
it goes on from there, but it just really, he was causing, I'm trying to deal with these 2 kids that need all these things. They can't even get ready for
Mhm.
school in a way that I think they should be able to get ready for school.
Yeah.
And I have to wake up at the crack of dawn just to get them ready. And then I got to deal with him too. And it just was like, no. And so
And
maybe somebody would put a higher percentage on the kids, but I really feel like if he was willing to work on himself,
yeah.
then
And
Yeah.
I didn't mean to ask, kind of where the percentages went. I just know that in our community,
mhm,
marriages with a diagnosis are tested twice as much. But what you highlighted and pointed out, it's part of the reason why we founded our men's group, because when you think of how men communicate versus women,
yeah,
men generally speaking are just more rigid. We're not as flexible. Because we want to fix and everything. So it becomes
yeah,
twice as. And I've never thought about what parenting style does not go with special needs or caregiving, and a lack of flexibility actually says that clearly. Let me ask you one other thing. You mentioned earlier that when I asked what excuse me, what was it about estate planning that interested you, what is it that you liked since you fell in love with it, and you mentioned that it was very simple in terms of if you do A, you get B, and these things. Do you think that because our work with regard to life insurance, retirement, and things like that, we try and simplify it for people,
yeah.
and I think we do a fairly good job of that. But I think that there's, my question is, do you think that because it's very cut and dry in terms of what you do and what you get, that estate planning in terms of families generally speaking, but especially those with special needs, do you think that's an easy thing for someone to grasp in terms of what direction they might want to go in if they're putting a plan together?
Yeah, and I think what people, sometimes miss 'cause I think like a lot of industries, your base level is always gonna be easy, right? Like, I mean, there's some
Mhm.
industries, okay, day 1 is hard, but a lot of industries, it's very easy in the beginning, in the base level. So a lot of people, for example, think they can DIY this kind of stuff because they're like, "I just
Yes.
fill in some blanks, it's super easy."
Right.
And then our job comes in, and same thing with you guys, and we get creative, right? It's our job is the creativity of, hey, you don't just have to put money into a 401k. You can actually retire in a bunch of other different ways. And if that money doesn't work that way for you, maybe we do it this other way. And
Yeah.
that's where I come in and say, okay, but what if this person dies before you? And then what if these people tend to drive together a lot. So they
Right.
might, for example, my best friend, it's just her husband, and her son. Neither one of them talk to their families. They don't need on either side. They drive to Vegas all the time. That's dangerous.
It is. Yep.
They could all three be wiped out in one thing. So
Mhm.
what are you going to do if you don't want the money to go to either family and you've just got this one kid who's still just a teenager, so he doesn't have kids yet? So there's all these things you have to think about, because they're like, well, of course it's just going to our son. Well, yeah, he's healthy and all that, but
Sure.
so yeah, it is very again, base level easy, but then you need to get creative sometimes to make sure everything flows the way you want to flow. And especially when you have, I would say, kids that are maybe special needs, maybe not, but they have, or maybe undiagnosed, they don't need full government aid and all that kind of stuff, but they need a little hand holding. They need a little guidance. How can we make sure that their money isn't just wasted because they're kind of a irresponsible, quote unquote adult, right? Because especially I think some of the people more our age are undiagnosed, right? And so people just figure, oh, they're a slacker. Oh, they're irresponsible. Well, actually, they might just be undiagnosed something or other. So, I don't want to give them large sums of money. A lot of my clients are in their 70s. They don't want to give large sums of money to this 40-year-old or whatever. And that's fine. Let's find a way that's not offensive so that you can give larger sums to the other kids, but give less to not a lump sum to this one kid, but to have them not ruin that sibling relationship at the same time. So yeah,
Sure. We
there's a
have
lot of
we have that in our business as well. There's as much information is available on the internet these days, and people feel like they can get answers. The reality is we actually know less than we used to, because we are just inundated with so much information. And so what makes us valuable, us and the three of us and those others that serve, is our ability to be aware of the pitfalls and concerns and the considerations that you don't get when you're filling out a template on the internet. So that's really smart. You have a unique approach to estate planning. Can we talk about that a little bit? Sean, is that all right? That's in line with your questions that you were going with, right? Because I think it's fascinating, and I hadn't heard of it before, and I'd love for you to share with us
I
what
wanted
makes
to
Yeah.
I wanted to just kind of just go back to
That's fine.
the chronology. Just that I definitely want to go to that, but just before that, I wanted to go back to the idea of, okay, so you're dealing with diagnosis, treatment, services, plans, single motherhood. And when you mentioned solopreneur, I'm still thinking like, just I do what I do because I'm half of a team with my wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's part of me, I'm sitting still, but at the same time, you should be seeing the top of my head, because I'm kind of like just, for those that have seen the video, I'm bowing in
Bowing.
admiration, because it's not, that's really something else. So tell us about that, which I'm sure, and then leading into Brian's question, because I'm sure the answer to that and how you
Yeah.
traverse that led into the approach that you take with
Yeah.
your planning.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, all this was around 2018 when my kids started getting diagnosed. And that's also, when husband left the picture, and when he left the state. So we hardly see him. So
It's not
it
that
really
long ago
is,
either.
no, yeah. So this was just me now. And I stayed in litigation until 2019, when I could see the handwriting on the wall that things were about to explode. I could just see it. And we were going to a therapist who was like, "Oh, you're just burnt out." And I went to some other people, and everybody's just telling me I'm tired. And then my kids started attacking everybody on earth with like gardening shears, grabbing their glasses off their heads and breaking it. I mean, just like jumping on the therapist. I mean, literally. And I'm like, do you think I'm tired? Do you think that's the problem here? Yeah. Thank you for validating what my concerns when I told you I think there's a big storm coming. And so that was the first time my little one was hospitalized. And I just was like, and I had already known, I'm like, I need to leave this field. I need to leave this industry. I can't be in court in Marina Del Rey. For those of you who don't know, you have to get to court on time. You have to leave about 2.5 hours early from where I live. And
Yeah.
so even though it's not that far, so it's like
20
12 miles.
miles.
Yeah, it's not that far. So yeah, it's really yeah, it just wasn't going to be doable. So I quit. I jumped without a parachute. I literally had nothing else lined up. I just was like, I just have to go, and I have to go now. And at first, I've always helped pre-law students to avoid student loans and things like that. And so I started
It's
actually
fantastic.
turning that into a business. I was always doing it on the side, just speaking at UCLA or places like that. And that was interesting. It was fun, but the students really just didn't want to part with their money. So I ended up writing a few books. They'll part with money for books, but not for courses or counseling or anything like that. And then COVID hit, and all of my friends remembered, "Hey, do you still do wills and trusts?" I said, "No, dude, that was 15 years ago." I said,
Yeah.
"No,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back to it because it had already failed, and it just seemed like it was doomed to failure again. And what I didn't take into account is I no longer look like I'm in middle school, and there's this thing called the internet now that didn't
Yeah.
exist in the early 2000s. I mean, we had email, but we really didn't have this like amazing Google or Instagram or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge game changer for me. So I had so many people coming to me because they all finally realized they might actually die someday. I'm like, you were always going to die, okay? Like,
Right. They just
COVID doesn't
realized
change
it was
that. It might
time.
expedite it, but
Right. Exactly.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's a thing that's guaranteed. But yeah, so I opened my firm in 2020, and yeah, so but yeah, Instagram, I would say, was a really big game changer. I really met a lot of people on Instagram, have a really strong network over there, and yeah, thanks. That's Jolene Estates is my Instagram, so if anybody wants to follow over there. But yeah, so what I was doing though is I was realizing as I was doing estate planning that there are a lot of families who really just can't afford an estate plan. You know, you have to put out several thousand. And then, of course, if you need a special needs trust on top of a standard plan, you're putting out more money. And a lot of families are just so trying to get by day to day. They're not even really thinking about estate planning. And again, why would I spend thousands on something I don't even have time to think about? And then on top of that, you've got people like me who were underemployed, unemployed, just jumping without a parachute or whatever because they have to take care of their kids. And so there are a lot of people in our community, especially usually the wives and the women they have to give up their careers. And
Yeah.
so they, again, can't really afford this. And so I thought, how can I make my estate plan like cheaper, free? I don't know, whatever I can do.
Accessible, yeah.
What's that?
I was just saying accessible, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Mhm.
And I also want to help them out in some other way as well. Like, how can I help them make money? How can I support this community from that back end as well? And so I
Mhm.
created a program. My kids are both in the self-determination program. And I created a program that is approved by the self-determination program. They don't approve legal documents, but they do approve courses. And so I created a course that teaches them everything they'd ever need to know about estate planning and funeral planning, because I'm also a funeral planner as well. So, what I realized in my estate planning practice is that estate planners, we help you with incapacity through powers of attorney, and we help you with post death with your will or trust. But we don't help you. We leave you high and dry during that one important week when you die. And so I went and got my insurance license so that I could also be a funeral planner. So you literally A to Z are taken care of when you work with me from incapacity till post death. So
Amazing.
have that. So the course covers all of that, why you want all those things and what they do for you, when they kick in, all that stuff. And so people pay for the course through their self-determination money. And that is more or less the standard price of maybe what I would charge you if you were to come to my law firm for legal documents. And so then my law firm, as a thank you for buying my course, I'm basically saying, I don't need to charge you twice. Give me $500 and I'll do your whole estate plan for $500.
Amazing.
So now it's out of
The
pocket
estate plans,
$500.
estate plans can range anywhere from, $1,200, $1,500 to $8,000, $9,000, depending on how complicated, $10,000, depending on how complicated it can
Yeah,
be.
I've even heard as high as 13,000 for, and then again, this is for a standard plan with a special needs trust. I'm not talking about high end, advanced tax planning type stuff. So yeah, it
Right.
is, you're absolutely right. There's a wide range and you never know where you're falling in that range or why or whatever. But yes, so this is mostly paid through your budget, a little bit paid by you. And then on the back end, what I want it to do to support families who aren't making enough money or to make sure
Mhm.
they can afford that $500 is if you refer somebody to me, so they buy the course, I will give you $500 as a referral fee. So now,
That's
Amazing.
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
amazing.
Yeah,
families
so
who don't make
it's
money, I mean, we all
yeah,
know if we're in the special needs community, we all know other special needs families.
100%. Absolutely.
completely. There's two things here. There's one, I got a statement and a question, and Brian and I talk about this all the time. If you put people before profits, as a business owner, your profit will come. That's a great example of that. And weaving the two together. It's not about just making a buck. It's about you can make a buck by making a difference. So I love that. The second thing is there are people that are listening that are still under the impression that a financial advisor, an estate planning attorney, they think one of two things if they're not wealthy and have experience with those services. They think that's for somebody else, or they think that may not really be important. Or they're at the other end of the spectrum where they may be disillusioned into wanting it to simply feel important. But tell our audience, we always say, if you don't have a plan for your money, somebody else does. Who do you think that is? And obviously, it's the government, regardless of how you vote or who's in office or what state you're in. So if
Mhm.
you can, let our audience know. Tell us about probate. Tell us what it is that happens if you don't have a plan in place, regardless of how much or how little you have, and why that is especially important to our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say I do have a phrase similar to yours. Mine is if you wait until you need it to get it, wait, let's see. It's been a while since I've said it. If you wait until you need it till you get it, it's too late. Whatever. Basically, it's too late to
It's
get it.
too late to get it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's a little
Right.
better than that, but whatever. It's not coming to me right now. But yes. So the first thing I say is we all have a body. So I don't care if you have only $2 in the bank. We all have a body we need to protect. Now, if you're a single adult, there is no one on this earth who can make medical or financial decisions on your behalf. So if you're in a bad car accident, bicycle accident, it doesn't matter, whatever type of accident, you have dementia, no one can make decisions. No one can say, okay, we don't want to do that type of treatment, or yeah, we want to do that, or pull the plug, or all those things. You have to go to court, get a conservator appointed so that they can come back. It takes weeks, it takes time, it takes money, it's stressful. So just having these documents in place in advance, the powers of attorney documents, can relieve all that stress. And by adult, what I mean is your high schooler who is 18 is an adult. So if they
Yeah.
are in a soccer accident, you cannot make any decisions on their behalf. So, and a lot of people, I think, sometimes doctors really try to work with you. So, they're like, oh, we were able to. Great. Good for you. Maybe you only
Mhm.
needed that little bit of wiggle room and the doctor was giving it to you. But you don't want to play like that. You want your children protected. You want yourself protected. And even if you're married, your spouse is the only one who can make those decisions for you. But one, you haven't laid out your wishes. And two, how often do you drive with your spouse? What is the likelihood that you're in a bad car accident and your spouse dies and you're in that coma? Now, no one can make those decisions for you because you're single. So that's my big, soapbox is please everyone get a power of attorney.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much money you have, how little money you have. The next thing is, if you have a kid that's going to be on government aid as an adult, they really need a special needs trust. This is basically a holder of the money so that it never takes away from their government aid. It supplements it in the ways that the government can't cover or doesn't cover. And if your kid ever does develop in a way where they don't need to be on government aid anymore, then it can be dissolved. It can be dissolved by the people who are managing it. They can make that decision and say, yeah, they don't need government aid. They've been off government aid for a year. We can either do a straight out, outright distribution or whatever. But it is flexible to meet your kids' needs, but never punish them for being on government aid. So super duper important. A lot of people like to say, oh, their sister will take care of it. Well, one, if you give all the money to the sister, and I'm not talking about the trust, they give the money to the sister. What if the
Mhm.
sister dies? What if the sister
Right.
gets married to a jerk? You
Right.
just don't know what order things are going to go in, and you're
Yeah.
kind of relying on sister outliving brother. And I'll give you a scenario. This guy was 90 when he called me, and his daughter in her 50s. He had two sons. He said, okay, I want to disinherit son number one because I gave him a lot of money during COVID. He got his money already. I'm going to give everything to daughter because son number two lives in a home. He's special needs. I said, okay, so what happens if daughter has a heart attack while she's driving and plows into a crowd of people? I mean, just you don't know what's going to happen to that money, and your son may never see it. Or what if daughter dies before you, but while you have dementia, and now you can't create estate planning documents, you put everything in her name, but she doesn't have any kids or a spouse, so it's going to go right back to you according to California law. So now you have all the stuff in your name, but you can't take it out of your name because you have dementia. So
Yeah.
it's going to go 50-50 to your two surviving sons. So your one son that's on government aid is going to get a lot of money, and it's going to be taken off government aid until every cent is
Mhm.
spent.
Yeah.
That's why you need an estate plan if you live in this special needs world. And then going
Yeah.
back to what you asked, Sean, too, about the basics of estate planning. So basically in California, if you have $200,000 in cash or real estate of any size, it could be a vacant land out in the middle of the desert, doesn't matter. You will
Mhm.
go through probate. Probate is a process where it basically is just saying, hey, calling all creditors, come forward and, speak now or forever hold your peace. And even if you're like, that's fine, we don't have any creditors, great. The court doesn't care. So it's going to they have to wait a minimum of 6 months, but it usually takes a year or more to get through
And
that
that's
process.
very and a year or more. If it takes place, you said a year or more. So let's say probate lasts 2 years. That's ridiculously on the short and conservative end, is it not?
Yeah, I've seen some miracle workers out there, but it's really, I mean, I've also seen the complete opposite, and the complete opposite is more common. So yes, it can take years, and it's not necessary. The fast ones are usually when there's pretty much no people involved. There's no objections
Mhm.
of any sort. So there's just nobody to contest who's going to be the executor, who's going to get all the stuff. It's just helps it. And you have an attorney who is like kind of that needle in a haystack. I mean, just has some kind of amazing system. So you have to have every duck in a row, which is just not common. It's just next
No.
to impossible.
And then I had my experience with probate. I had my grandfather had a property, left it to my uncle. My uncle left it to my brother and I and some other family members. And that wasn't even here in California. That was in the Virgin Islands. And probate lasted 10 years,
Oh gosh.
which from my understanding is not necessarily the strangest thing. The other thing is a trust is if we talk about the difference between a trust and a a will is public information. In other words, when you talk about calling creditors, so to speak, there are people. If one wants to comb the resources to find out where wills are being executed and that sort of thing, they can step forward and throw themselves into the mix because that's available. Whereas a trust, the information is privately held. Is that not correct too?
Exactly. So it's a lot more just your own information. It's not out in the public in any way. The only thing that's public about the trust is that your deed will then be converted from your name to your trust name, and that is a public document.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, nothing else. So yeah, it is a lot more private. It's a lot more secure. It's harder to contest a trust than a will.
Mhm.
But again, I get caution everybody against that DIY. I do a whole speech on DIY nightmares and like things that I've seen. And it's insanity. And adding your kids to your deed is definitely not. A lot of people think, oh, I don't need a will or trust if I just put my kid on my deed because that's all I really have. The government knows about that. That's not some secret passageway. They're very aware, and you will be heavily taxed. And I actually was giving a speech on like
Mm.
estate planning 101, and I mentioned this, and this girl raised her hand in the back, and I said, "Yeah." And she said, "That happened to me. My grandma added me to her deed, and they gave me 4 months to come up with $30,000." So yeah, you don't add someone to your deed 10, 20, 30, whatever years down the road. They will be heavily taxed when you die. If you give it to
Let
them to
me,
trust, it will not be
yeah.
taxed.
So I was gonna. It's funny you say that because I know someone who, in anticipation of their passing away, are looking to have their property, the deed changed to the name of a family member that they trust, and they have a trust as well. To avoid the taxation, the only way to do that is to make sure that the words in the trust state that the property is to go to that individual, regardless of what the deed says. Is that not correct?
No, the deed needs to be changed to inside the trust.
Oh, to
So
the deed would need to be changed to the trust, and the trust needs to then say, and within the trust, the language needs to say that it's going to that person. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
exactly.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. Go, Brian.
On a separate note, I was going to say, I know I had a client whose parents were aging, and mom was starting to show signs of, maybe early onset of Alzheimer's or to some dementia. And they wanted to put a trust together because they had some siblings, the children there were some siblings there that there was a lot of fighting in between. And so in that particular case where, and again, just so people know that better do a trust early as opposed to late, especially when the donors
Cognitive.
there's a cognitive lapse because the trust itself can be contested, correct? Is there a way
Yes.
around that?
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for a lot of fighting afterwards. And of course, the whole point of estate planning is to avoid that fighting, to make things smooth and easy and
Right.
provide a little certainty. So yeah, so what I tell people is if, first of all, yeah, the earlier you do it so that there's no cognitive issues, great. But let's just say it's too late for that. And you want to do something like a 70-30 between your two kids, like for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What I like to do is I am a notary, but I usually bring an outside notary with me so they can also testify to the level of, cognition of this person. But also, um, it depends on the situation, but a lot of times when it is kind of like, usually, especially flat out disinheriting somebody, I will take a video of that person telling me why they're disinheriting that kid. And if
Mm.
we ever need it, and I don't share it, I don't give it to the kid that, is getting all the money or whatever. It's mine. But usually the kid who's in good favor knows about it. And so I just tell them, you come back to me if you need it. But otherwise, it's mine. I'm keeping it. It's just if you need it, if there's litigation. But yeah, because I've had a couple of people disinherit their children. And it was a little bit touchy, like I had a man, he had a stepdaughter, the wife had died. And when the wife had dementia, the daughter would take the mom to the bank and take out a bunch of money.
Hmm.
And she kept all the money. And of course, this is just the story I was told, right? I don't have the bank accounts. I don't know. This was
Sure.
years ago.
Yeah.
But this is what my client's telling me. And he lives with his daughter, the good child, right? And so who knows? Maybe she's unduly influencing him. I don't know. Things look fine to me, but I could be misled as well. So I had him create a video telling me exactly why. Because on the legal documents, it doesn't say why you're doing it. It just says, 0% to this kid or 70-30 or whatever. So if you want an
Right.
explanation, it really is somewhere else. And if I have a valid reason, if I have somebody who doesn't, if there's no negativity, but there is a valid reason for the 70-30, like a friendly reason, like this kid's worked hard their whole life, but can't ever seem to get ahead. And this one's always done just fine, had luck of, the gods or whatever. So I'm only giving that one's 30%, but the kid who's always down on their luck, it's not that they're not a hard worker. I'm going to give them 70%. I always tell those people, I would write sealed envelope letters to your children. Let them know how much you love them and why you're doing 70-30. And that way, at least they don't go away hating each other, hopefully, so, or having bad feelings about you. Like, why'd I only get 30%?
Yeah.
So Yeah. So
With,
there's different options.
I mean, Jolene, that's so, I mean, it really is fascinating. Again, it's another facet of estate planning that people don't really think about. So if you are a child, and again, and even if you're an adult child, with children of your own, and your parent passes and you've been disinherited, how would you know that, and what recourse would you have if they didn't have a video, or didn't have any kind of explanation? And can that be
Yeah.
contested if there's none of that supporting documentation?
Yeah, and I mean, most people kind of know. They might not know they were going to get zero, but they usually know there's something in the family that's weird. Um,
Yeah,
but but let's just say yes, they don't know, or they didn't know it was going to be 0%. So first of all they have the right as a potential beneficiary to ask for the documents and to see that they really aren't in there. They can hire an attorney and litigate, the trust. I mean, again, trusts are harder to win, but not impossible. And especially
mm,
if they have other evidence, there can be things like, you can hire a handwriting expert. That's not even mom's signature. You know,
mm,
you never know exactly what happened. Um, I mean, because certainly, I mean, before something gets notarized or witnessed, you should be checking IDs, but you never know, right? You just don't know what's going on half the time. And a lot of people falsify things. So yeah, I've definitely had clients who were not, again, not fully there. We did our best that we could do with them. I've had clients I've had to go back to more than once because the first time I went there, they weren't able to communicate well enough. But maybe the second day, their meds had kicked in, or whatever the thing was. It's funny because I usually will do those types of clients in the morning because dementia type people are usually better in the morning.
sure,
And I
sure.
had this client who was like, "It's urgent. You have to come now. You have to come now." And so I went over at 5. I kept telling him no, but finally I said, "Fine, I will come." It was like 5 o'clock at night. And sure enough, his mom could not talk to me at all. And I said, "Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow morning." Like I said, and sure enough, the next morning, yep, no problem. Now
Yeah,
that it
sure.
was a dire situation though, unfortunately, both his parents had been put on hospice. They didn't
Ah,
have they didn't have a trust. They had a will, fortunately. So that made my job
Yeah.
very easy because I had their intentions. Um, and so I drafted it within 4 or 5 days. I think this was like a Saturday, and I came back on Friday to have them sign everything. And dad had died Thursday night.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. And the thing is, mom cannot sign these documents because it says she's married, and every single document has the wrong information. So I had to go back and
it's all
recreate all the
changed.
documents. Yeah. So, luckily she was doing even better the next time I came back, but, I mean, she was, like I said, not communicating when I first arrived, and then dad died within the week. I mean, it was bad. I don't know why people wait that long, and I mean, I asked my 70-year-olds, "Why are you doing this now?" And they say, "Well, we thought it was about time." I'm like, "Really? When else would you think it's time? I mean, this is kinda cutting it a little late." I mean, you look at there's plenty of people like David Bowie didn't make it to 70. I mean, there's a lot of famous people. Alan Rickman didn't make it to 70. I mean,
Yeah.
if you wait till you're in your 70s to do your estate plan, you might be missing something. So
Hmm.
definitely
James
people always ask,
Gandolfini, James
what's that?
Gandolfini, James Gandolfini, Aretha Franklin. There's a whole bunch of those that did not have
Yeah,
proper documentation in place.
it's so scary. So yeah, I definitely recommend if people are capable of this, if they know they're going to buy a home soon, they're saving
Hmm.
up for that down, that's when I would usually recommend they get an estate plan because you can put your house into the trust the minute you buy it if you already have the trust. You don't have to have a house first. You can have the trust first and then have the house.
Right,
Yeah.
So
right.
yeah, I think people really think, oh, I have to be an adult, like an adult, like older.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
that's that's very timely too. It's I'll just say shameless plug, but it's service oriented. At the time that we're recording this, this is the 20th of January. This Friday, I'm hosting an event that this just every bit of it is an alignment. It's based on goal setting, keeping promises, and specifically if people are looking to get their financial house in order. But there's information that I'll be sharing that covers just goal setting and the importance of keeping promises to oneself and how timely things are. And what made me think of it is one of the things that I'll be talking about is just like, we can't do anything about that which is gone. The only thing that we have for certain that is 100% guaranteed is this moment right here and right now. We're never going to be as young as we were when I began the sentence. And I just think that the value that you brought here today with regard to those things. And I'll be honest too, I consider myself to be the king of a village known as procrastination. And I fight that monarchy that I'm a part of on a daily basis. And so that's the reason why I thought about the event. It was supposed to be centered around Quitters Day. Brian was familiar with it. I was not. I mean, it's usually the second Friday in January.
Second Friday after the first of the year.
Right. And it's the day by which statistically people tend to take the foot off the gas and back away from their resolutions. And I think it's just like we say, just anything that affects the general population affects our community twice as much. So, in the show notes, registration will be, included there. And I'm just indebted to you for everything that you've shared here today, Jolene, especially not just what you do, because we work with a multitude of attorneys that work in estate planning, especially special needs. But what I'm so taken by is your energy and your story and how you've chosen to do what you do. That itself is different and of value. And I've got so many clients in my mind and my head right here. And it's another reason why I'm so thankful for this podcast, because it allows us to align ourselves with just some of the best people.
Yeah, I've been listening to your show. I absolutely agree. You are definitely aligned with a lot of amazing people.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you.
We're at that point, Sean. You want to ask Jolene the question? Tell me, I don't even know
Yes.
what prepped you for.
Yeah, you prepped me for it. I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay.
And I'll go on a limb and say that Jolene is probably one of the exceptions that probably wouldn't need prep, but the fact that she has it is even great, because that's maybe she roll with it anyway. But this is the point of the show where we ask the following question, make the following statement and ask the following question. And that is that, our ability to change the world. When we talked about world peace and everything and adding value to others, we like to live by the words of the great Muhammad Ali, which is that service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth, because it is rented. Nobody owns it. And our ability to change the world is based on our ability or our willingness to change ourselves. So with that said, give us just one example of a thought or belief that you once believed very strongly, but no longer believe to be true.
Okay, so this is gonna sound so silly, especially since I had prep, but it literally changed the trajectory of my entire life. So, so the key point here is little things can make a big difference. So my dad and I had the same trait, which was we're always right. We just always felt like we were always right. And so one day I was in my early 20s, I think it was either right before law school or my beginning of law school. I was living with my dad at that time. And he comes home from work and he says, I was in an argument with my coworker today about which overpass by the 5 and 14 is the highest. Now, for those who aren't in the LA area or haven't been out that way in a while, the 5 takes you to Magic Mountain. The 14 takes you to my grandma's house. Okay. So, so I've been out there a million times. And also for those who don't know, in the last 2 major LA earthquakes, the 14 south to the 5 is the one that collapsed both times. So of course, isn't that the highest? And so my dad, I said that's the one that's the highest. I drive it all the time when I come back from grandma's house. And he said, yeah, I know. That's what I kept telling him. And so we're sitting here thinking this guy's an idiot, going on and on about how this guy's an idiot. And he goes, yeah. And then he says, well, I live out there. And that did not give my dad pause, but it gave me pause. And I thought, okay, I do drive out there all the time, but I don't live out there. So I didn't say anything. I just left it alone, walked away. And the next time I went to my grandma's house, I paid more attention. And sure enough, this guy was right. There's another overpass that's higher. And I was so in shock. I never noticed all the times I'd taken these overpasses. And so I came home and I said, Dad, that guy's right. There's one that's higher. It's from here to there. And he was like, what? Really? I was like, yeah. Anyway, he believed me. But it was just like, how could we have been so stuck in our own beliefs that, and especially with my dad, right? That this guy says, I live there. And he's still like, no way. I know I'm right. And again, for me, I had doubt, but I still didn't fully believe this guy. So it just showed me, honestly, that sometimes I need to take a step back. And honestly, again, this is before I was a lawyer. I think it saved a lot of face for me as a lawyer, because instead of getting so rooted in my position, a lot of times I was listening. I think I was a better negotiator because I just didn't assume my position was always right.
Interesting.
Didn't necessarily totally take in the other side either, but at least I had that grain of salt going on. I really think it impacted my friendships and everything else. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
You know how silly that sounds? Not at all. It
No,
goes
amazing.
because we always talk about, and in the show where we talk about questions are more powerful than statements. We need to remain more childlike and less childish. And once upon a time, if I did my research, and if I was pretty sure of what I would say, I said there is no way, blah blah blah. And so what happens is, even if you're right, what you're saying is, I'm just certain, and I'm just giving you the fact that this is such and such. But what the other person receives is, you're dumb, you're wrong, I'm smart, and I'm right. So there's an immeasurable amount of grace that's given by saying, no matter how certain you are that you're right, well, based on what I know, blah, blah, just it gives people room and grace. And it's so valuable. It's so valuable. That's one of the best answers I've ever had.
Yeah. I live by the
And
adage.
I was thinking about it too.
Right,
And
or you can be happy. You can be right or you can be happy, right?
exactly. And it goes back to what you said earlier, Sean, about the political climate and so forth, that a lot of people are so stuck in their I'm right, I know the facts, this is my news channel, this is your news channel, and mine's right and yours wrong, and it goes on both sides of that fence.
Yep.
And we're all so stuck, and maybe if we all took a deep breath, a little step back, so yeah.
And
Sure.
and the other thing is, I've seen people say things like, we need tolerance and we need love and we need so and so. And I get the feeling that the reason why they're saying that, especially if given today in the most recent election, that it went their way, that sometimes they're saying that because they just don't want to argue or face the friction that comes with that, which is kind of like, one's point of view. But let's say your candidate did not win. The value of that is immeasurable too, because it doesn't mean that you go, all right, I acquiesce, I'm going to be peaceful just for the sake of it, even though I think that the candidate is a criminal and wrong and blah 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 and da da da. The other thing is this: fundamentally, we should be about exchanging energy with each other. Yeah. If our time on this planet is limited, if your differences in views don't allow you to exchange energy, then you have to back away and step away from that conversation. It's like, once upon a time, the conversations that take place in the barbershop or the water cooler, especially with, like, say, sports, and sports have numbers, right? And numbers don't lie, but people will still have an argument about who's the greatest ever in certain sports. And a competitive guy like Kobe Bryant, I remember asking him about, where do you think you rank in terms of the greatest of all time? He goes like, I don't get into those type of discussions. And they were like, you're Kobe Bryant. What do you mean you don't get into that? He goes, I don't get into fights or competitions that I can't necessarily win. Life is short. What means it means that if you're rooted in the way you feel, why waste time trying to convince somebody else? So that's immeasurable in value. Love it.
We're gonna run out of time. So we say thank you, Jolene, for being here today. This has been awesome. Putting your website up again for people who are listening. JoleneBlackbourn.com, JoleneBlackbourn, Blackburn.com/estates. Thank you. So it's such a great conversation. I knew it was gonna be high energy. There's a lot to talk about. So love to have you back again, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to work on together as we go down the road. So as we get ready to sign off here, I just want to say, again, empathy and love always, now more than ever. Be empathetic to people that you going through a situation you have no idea what they're dealing with, and look at the world through the lenses of love. It's a world's a much better place. So thank you again, Jolene. Sean, you want to sign us off here?
Most definitely, Jolene. Gratitude eternal. Thank you so very much. Looking forward to working with you in the very near future. Hopefully you'll stick around once we sign off. And again, be more childlike, less childish. Questions are more powerful than statements. Everybody needs the same thing: to be heard, seen, and matter, and know that they're loved. Everybody wants to be to know that someone got them. And to everyone within the sound of my voice, we love you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jolene.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye-bye.